All right, welcome to the Progressive Rehab and Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rory Alter, here with my lovely co-host, Dr. Liz Havison. We're clinical coaches here at Progressive Rehab and Strength. And today we are sitting down with Chelsea Savit, a very highly energetic and exciting competitor to watch in the USA Powerlifting and Powerlifting America realm. So we're sitting down here with Chelsea today because not to talk about training and what it took to get to the level that she was at. But Chelsea experienced a pretty significant back injury that was followed with a pretty significant back surgery as well. And we're going to talk to her about her journey in deciding to have surgery and the journey back to elite level powerlifting, the length of time, the mindset, and all of the identity shifts that kind of come along with that for lifters to hopefully help inspire the people who are listening, whether you're a recreational lifter or a locally competitive lifter or any type of athlete, who's dealing with an injury, just to kind of share the stories behind what goes into elite athletes and their mindset and journey to recovery. So, Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us. We are extremely excited to talk with you. Your journey has been really incredible to watch. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your athletic career, what led you into powerlifting, and just share a little bit about yourself so that the people who are listening can relate to you before we dive into the injury.
Sure. Thanks for that intro. And I'm obviously so flattered to be here. Thanks for having me, Rory and Alyssa. Um, so, when I was very young, my mom put me in cheerleading. She wanted me to be exposed to different sports, and she thought that I'd really like that. And in cheerleading, they have the flyers and they have the spotters. And I was at the age of like 4 or 5 years old. They made me a spotter instead of a flyer. And perhaps I should have taken that as a cue that maybe weightlifting and powerlifting and strength sports are a good fit for me because they put me in the back and they wanted me to throw people and catch people. But I really wanted to be the flyer. So I asked my mom to put me in gymnastics, and then she put me in gymnastics, and then I was like, okay, I'm quitting power. I'm quitting cheerleading now, and I like gymnastics much better. So I did gymnastics for about, I think, 15 years. I forget the precise start and end, but I did it all the way through my first semester of college. I was a recruit to Yale University for their collegiate gymnastics team, and I was pretty good at gymnastics, I would say. Level 10 for several years, if you know gymnastics at all. Level 10 is like the level before like elite.
Mm-hmm.
They have a whole leveling system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I got up to level 10 and I competed at Junior Olympic Nationals once, which was a really good time. And yeah, and I made my way to Yale's gymnastics team. But along the way, I incurred many injuries. Gymnastics is it's a very intense sport, and um, I had a lot of ankle injuries. I would sprain one ankle, then 2 weeks later, I'd sprain the other ankle back and forth. I always had ankle tape on. And I also incurred a back injury at some point during gymnastics. And so I had spondylolisthesis at
Mm-hmm.
L5S1. And apparently, that's a very common injury that
Mm-hmm.
young gymnasts incur.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was diagnosed with that in my late teens,
Mm-hmm.
probably around, I don't know precisely when the diagnosis was, maybe around 17. Um, and yeah, so I had some back pain and incurred that injury from gymnastics. And with spondylolisthesis, it's not the type of injury that sort of, it's a structural injury. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily correct itself over
Right.
time.
Mm-hmm.
But if if you're not in pain, you can manage your life just fine
Mm-hmm.
while you have the injury. So I was aware of it. I would get back pain from time to time, um, but it wasn't really a big issue. It wasn't the reason I stopped gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I stopped doing gymnastics because of perpetual ankle injuries, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So after my freshman year of college, uh, I left the sport. Which is a pretty common path, I think, for a lot of gymnasts, to not do the sport into their 20s. So I think I
Right.
quit when I was maybe 20 years old
Mhm.
after my freshman year of college. And yeah, but gymnastics is a very time consuming sport, and I definitely loved many aspects of it. I loved the strength aspect of it. We really did so much strength and conditioning on a day-to-day basis, and just the challenge and the training. I always loved all of that.
Mhm.
So when I when I had to leave the sport, I kind of didn't know what to do with myself. I really wanted to continue to feed that athletic need that I had,
Mhm.
but I didn't really know what to do. Um, I did have an aunt who told me when I was like, I don't know, 17 or 18 years old, she said, Chelsea, you'd be a great powerlifter. And, I didn't think that she knew anything about powerlifting. I knew that she was in the bodybuilding world. My first cousin actually is an IFBB pro
Oh
bodybuilder.
yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, Ariel Kadar. So I was really close with her and her mom growing up. And so my aunt, she said, at some point to me, she said that I'd be really good at powerlifting. So I never forgot that. And then after I quit gymnastics, I found out that Yale had a college powerlifting team. And then I was like, maybe this will be interesting. So I went to practice one day. They let me on the team. I think I was the one of two women on the team, and I squatted 185 on my first day, 185 pounds.
That's
And
insane.
then,
And just
which
for reference, Chelsea, how tall are you?
I it's funny, I actually gained a little bit of height during
With
my
the
back sur
surgery?
with the
Yeah.
surgery. I noticed that, like, little smidge of height that I gained immediately. It was maybe,
Yeah.
like, probably not even half an inch,
Uh-huh.
but I was like, "Whoa, I feel like I can see so much more of the
Oh,
world
that's so
now."
funny.
Yeah. So I'm 5'1" now. At
Oh,
the
so you're a
time,
little shorter than
I
Yeah,
think at the
so
time I was, like, 5 feet, maybe 5'1.5",
yeah.
something like that.
And just so what weight classes do you, or back then I guess should we say, what weight class were you in, just for people to kind of grasp this like amount of just like natural strength that you have?
I think at the time I was anywhere from 150 to 160. I was
Okay.
always a heavier gymnast,
Yeah,
which
so
is
Chelsea's a brick house. So
yeah, I was always a heavier gymnast, and gymnastics coaches always told me that I need to lose weight. So
don't they tell us all, gymnasts,
yeah,
dancers, figure skaters, it's like always.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't mention that, but that was also another motivation for leaving the sport
Mhm.
is kind of that environment. And I realized that my eating disorder and body image issues were sort of perpetuating even on my college team when I
Mhm.
had sort of left every, club gymnastics behind.
Mhm.
So that was also a motivator for leaving. It was like, oh, this is still here. I'm still dealing with these issues, even though I'm
Yeah.
in a better environment.
Right.
So, yeah, so leaving the sport was also about injuries and sort of the mental and emotional need to improve
Mhm.
that aspect of my mental health and well being. So,
So squatted
where
Just
were
180.
we?
Yep, go ahead.
just to
Sorry.
give sort of a reference of time frame, because I know we're going to go into talking about your injury and surgery and where you are now. What year was this
um,
that you got into
20,
powerlifting?
I guess my first introduction to it, I think the first time I squatted 185 was like 2010.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
about 13 years ago. And I showed up to a few practices throughout that year, and I didn't like really get into it. I I used that as sort of a springboard to just start lifting on my own and
Mhm.
going to the gym. But I didn't really get entrenched in the team because I didn't really get it. I
Mhm.
didn't get the concept of going to a meet and squat and hitting a squat, bench, and deadlift. Like it didn't make sense to me. And I knew the team did that, but I was just like, I don't need to do that. I just need to lift weights at the gym. So that's what I did for a few years is I sort of trained with the team on and off and learned how to get into, I learned how to squat, bench, and deadlift. My technique was terrible for several years. And then
So I have a question in that time frame for the couple of years that you were, going to these practices but not competing and, just getting into the gym and learning how to lift. Did you experience back pain?
I did not actually did not
Okay.
experience back pain.
Okay.
Um, as I said, like I knew about the structural injury. Extension is
Mhm.
I would say was a trigger for the pain, and
Mhm.
I wasn't really arching much on bench at the time. I didn't know you had to arch on bench. um, and yeah, so it was mostly triggered by gymnastics, I
Yeah.
would say, and those types of movements. At the time when I started lifting weights, I didn't really feel back pain.
Yeah, so this was kind of like a whole new world, like no intense training, like I'm sure it was much less training than you were doing when you were doing gymnastics. There wasn't the
Yep.
whole like you need to lose weight, you need to cut weight or manage weight. I mean, obviously like as we get into more competitive powerlifting, there are other complexes around weight classes and all that kind of stuff, but and now you're enjoying something without pain also, so
Yes.
that's kind of cool. So when did you um, get into powerlifting, and when did you start to experience your symptoms in powerlifting? Like when did you get into competitive powerlifting and then start to experience your symptoms?
Yep. So a few years later, I met a lovely man on OkCupid. His name is Andre
Oh yeah, I
Gravineski.
remember it was Okay Cupid, and we're
Yeah.
recording this just a week before Valentine's
Oh
Day.
yeah, that's funny. Love is in the air. Yeah, so I met him on OkCupid, and little backstory on Andre. He was actually a USAPL Open National Champion back in I think 2009.
Wow.
Yeah, back in the day, and I told him I was like, "Hey, I'm on the powerlifting team in college. I powerlift." And then he's like, "No, you don't, because you've never done a meet." I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? I do the squat, bench, and deadlift, and I've deadlifted like 260 for 4, and I think at the time I may have benched 135. Um, yeah, I was like, I squat 2 plates and I bench a plate, and I could deadlift 260 for a couple reps. And then he's like, I don't believe it until I see it. And then on the second date, we went to the gym,
Oh my god, so
and
cute.
he fixed my technique, and I deadlifted like 315. Um, and
Technique
I benched
matters.
like,
Technique
yes, he fixed my
matters.
technique. I deadlifted, actually, no, it wasn't 315. I think I deadlifted 300 pounds.
Mhm.
Um, I think I benched like 135 for a set of 8. He fixed me up, and I don't know, sometimes you fix a small technique thing, it makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
And then I was like, whoa, I'm lifting a lot more weight. This is kind of exciting. And then, well, he egged me on to do a meet. And so a couple months later, in April 2013, I did my first local meet, and I did pretty well. I think I squatted like 275, 125 kilos, benched, I think 75 kilos around there. And
Mhm.
then I deadlifted about 180, 175. I think it
Mhm.
was 172 and a half
Mhm.
ish. I would have to like look at my open powerlifting. I don't even remember. But yeah, they were pretty solid numbers. I think it was the 75 kilo class at the time in the USAPL.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't cut weight or anything, and had a pretty solid first meet. And I was like, whoa, I want to do that again. And
And
then
just an aside for anyone listening who's never done a meet, that is exactly what you want at your first meet. You don't want to cut weight, you want to have fun, and you want to be like, yeah, I want to do this again. Just as an
absolutely.
aside. Because then
Yeah.
look at Chelsea. She developed this huge career in powerlifting. So,
Yeah, that's how it all starts. It's like you just kind of dip your toes in, and you just keep it fun, and you
hmm
focus on not cutting weight and just
hmm
fixing up your technique and getting into a flow of training consistently
right.
and seeing that there's like a positive outcome from that. It
Yeah.
was really cool. And I think at the time, like, I don't even think there was Instagram at the time. Maybe there was like early Instagram. And so I just was not
No,
in a,
because so no, this is how we met. So this is how we met. Because then the year later, I kind of had the same journey as you. I was like, oh, okay. Like I did an April-ish meet in USAPL, and then we met at USAPL Nationals 2014.
mm,
So and I had that's like I remember I started an Instagram account to see who my competition was at nationals, and I found you. So like Instagram was super new back then.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So anyway, I interrupted you. Keep going. So
No, it's fine.
let's see. So, that's kind of like the start of your powerlifting career. You went to nationals and you were always in the top 5 at least at nationals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that year in 2013, I won juniors, and I think I took second in open after Kim Walford. It was a huge spread between me and Kim Walford because Kim Walford is Kim Walford.
Right?
But and the talent pool of powerlifting continues to get deeper over time. So I mean, I think my total was in the 800s,
Mhm.
close to 900. Um, I should look it up. I should know what these numbers are. But
No, it's you don't have to look it up, but no, I mean that's the totals. I mean, at least in 2014, when I met you on the platform, they were in the 900s. We both hadn't
yeah,
hit 1,000 pounds. It was a couple, maybe like two years later that we hit 1,000 pounds.
yeah.
So then this kind of led you to this journey of like doing nationals and the Arnold, and then when was your first world championship?
My first world championship was in 2017.
So it was after the back surgery. Or
No,
is
it
that
was
just
before.
before the
It
back
was
surgery?
before. Yep.
Okay, so you know, when did you so Chelsea you've been competing for a very long time. Your first competition was in 2013 and here we are in 2023. Um uh doing this podcast interview, and you've been an athlete your whole life. You don't take you're not used to taking time off. You're used to always being occupied and having something to work for and having something to train for. Um and you left one thing to left cheerleading to fill the void of wanting to be the flyer, and then you left gymnastics to kind of fill the void of like, I don't want to be injured and I don't want to be mentally and emotionally bogged down by this like need to be smaller.
hmm
And then you get into powerlifting, you really enjoy it, and in when did you then you start to develop this back pain that kind of haunted you in gymnastics, which was one of the reasons why you left. And now you have something that's kind of like inhibiting your ability to maintain consistency and enjoy powerlifting. So tell us a little bit about the onset of the injury and how that started to affect you and what led you to having surgery.
Sure. So after starting in 2013, when I first started competing in powerlifting, I was just like, whoa, this is awesome. And I got really into it, just mentally and physically invested in the
Mhm.
training and getting better and the
Mhm.
process and being entrenched in that meet cycle. So
Mhm.
Arnold Nationals every year.
Yep.
And so I was training probably 4 to 5 days a week consistently, just ever since things started going well for me, I
I,
guess.
I
And
hear cats. I don't know
yeah,
where those cats are coming from.
they're not in my
Whose house?
office.
Because we have 2 houses of cats here. So
That's funny. Yeah, they're not even in this room. They're in the hallway out there.
no, it's okay. We love cats.
um, so yeah, I became entrenched in the sort of powerlifting meet cycle and training and trying to PR every meet and trying to place higher and higher. And I did eventually want to go to Worlds. That was really my goal.
Mhm.
Um, and funny enough, I got an invite in 2014, but I turned it down because it was in South Africa, which just seemed so far and expensive at the time for
I was
like, and I
there.
did. Oh, you went?
Yeah.
It was far
It was
and
really far.
expensive.
And a little
Yes.
and a little scary, right? Like I heard some scary stories about South Africa.
Well, it depends on, I mean, I had been to South Africa before,
Oh,
but
okay.
Mm.
you just have to be cautious
Yeah, I mean, and you were pretty
as a
young then too.
tourist.
You were still a junior lifter.
I was still a
So,
junior lifter, and I was like, wait, I feel like I don't deserve to go. Like, I haven't, I'm not, like, I haven't put enough time in the sport to really be at a level where I feel like I deserve to be there, which that really was just imposter syndrome at the time.
right. Yeah.
And I almost wish that I didn't have that thinking at the time, that I just went, because having gone to the world championships twice now, like,
Mhm.
it really is just a very special experience. And
Yeah, and I just want to pause for a moment for people who are listening who are like, oh, well, like I'm not good enough, or like all this stuff. Like, this is, we all go through that. And when you invest your time and your energy in doing something, and you you qualify for something and you want to go, or you've been invited to do something, don't like, you just like listen to what Chelsea's saying, because I know another person who declined an invitation, and really kicks himself in the butt every year when nationals and worlds rolls around, and he's like, oh, I should have gone, I should have gone. Exactly what you said. It's such a unique and amazing opportunity to be invited to something like this, that even if you are new in this sport and you qualify, like, you qualified, so do it. If you have the resources, do it. It's such an amazing opportunity. So
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely regret turning it down in 2014.
Learn from
Um,
Chelsea's mistake.
yes, because it does get harder, because the competition landscape changes every year, and also just your ability to train
Hmm.
consistently changes, will change over time. And I guess back to my back surgery, I would say that I started to experience symptoms a few years into, maybe like 2015,
Hmm.
2016 ish. And they were kind of on off, and they didn't always manifest as back pain. They sometimes manifested as leg pain, or really, my piriformis, I remember,
Hmm.
was really tight, and I would just like deal with those symptoms. I would get my
Right.
piriformis massaged or
Right.
acupunctured, and so I was kind of I was noticing weird symptoms. I didn't know that they were directly attributed to my back,
Hmm.
because again, just lack of knowledge, and just again, like tight glutes and a little bit of leg pain, lack of knowledge.
Had you seen anyone for those symptoms?
So I went to chiropractors, and someone along the way, one of the chiropractors I went to said that I should, get an X-ray, and for my back. And I was like, okay. So I think I have an X-ray from like 2015,
Hmm.
where it was kind of showing the progression of the
Hmm.
spondylolisthesis. The
Hmm.
progression being like the the vertebrae kind of progressively
Yeah.
becoming more unaligned.
Yeah. So for just, we probably should have mentioned
It's
what this
probably a
is in the
better way to
beginning.
say that, but
No. So spondylolisthesis is, and on the YouTube video, what I'll do is I'll put a picture of the spine. So there's these little kind of arches on the spinal vertebra, and they get small fractures on either side. So you can get a fracture on one side, or you can get a fracture on both sides. And when you do have a fracture on both sides, then the fat part of the bone shifts away from the pointy part of the bone, and that degree of slippage or movement, they grade it from like 1 to 4. And so the spondylolisthesis is the fracture, and then when it starts to travel, it can travel forwards or back, and we get retro or anterolithesis. And then that movement starts can you can have all these things with no symptoms. Obviously, like, Chelsea went through periods of time where she had no symptoms, even though she had the spondy. um, but then there were times where it was worse and inflamed. But once that starts to travel, it kind of doesn't travel back and heal. So over time, the more we kind of keep aggravating the area and keep promoting the stress that caused the injury initially, which is the loaded extension for you, then we can get that movement of the body of the spine of the vertebra more forward over time. So what Chelsea's talking about is the degree that the body of the vertebra was moved forward. So,
right.
um, so, so was there was like only one chiropractor that ever was like, you know what, we should check out your spine?
Yeah.
Even though you had all these leg symptoms, they're just like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just treat the butt instead of the
Yeah.
back.
Yep. And the ankle and the leg, the leg pain. So eventually, though, in 2017, which was, I would say, the peak of my competitive powerlifting, I got
Mm-hmm.
back to the world championships, just missed the platform by half a kilo.
Mm.
So I got fourth, but I did take a silver medal on bench.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great time. That year, I really started to, the symptoms were getting to be pretty unmanageable.
Yeah.
Um,
So what were you experiencing?
Again, it was just intense glute pain. I did
Oh,
start
so
to
it's
feel
just the
actually,
same symptoms, just much worse.
yeah, same symptoms, much worse. I did start to feel some direct pain in my lumbar spine though, as
Mm-hmm.
well. So then I was like, maybe it is the back. So then I ended up seeing an orthopedist who specialized in spine surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and I specifically sought out. I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time, and I was training at a bodybuilding gym, and I don't know how I overheard this conversation, but I sort of inserted myself when someone was talking about Ronnie Coleman's back surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, hmm, I want to know a little bit more about that because Ronnie Coleman has had
Right.
many fusions, and then I was like, well, he's in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, so I wonder who did his back surgery. And I know that he's had difficult outcomes, but I
Mm-hmm.
figured, well, if they're willing to operate on someone that muscular, then maybe they'll be willing to operate on someone with my level of muscularity.
Yeah.
So I found out who his doctor was, and I made an appointment with him. I think that was back in April 2017. So that was even before
So how did
Worlds.
you get to the point where you were thinking about surgery? Because I remember at some point you had reached out to me, and I believe you had even gone to see Stuart McGill.
Mm.
So was that before or after the concept of surgery kind of entered into your mindset?
So having seen orthopedists for my spine when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of told me that I would probably need back surgery someday.
Gotcha. Okay.
But they were like, "Oh, but it would be a long way now. Maybe when you're older, maybe
Mm-hmm.
in your 50s."
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oops.
and I think the average age of someone who has a spinal fusion is in their 50s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
we usually see it much older.
yeah. Um, so I had seen that orthopedist before Worlds, but then I was like, well, I still got to go to Worlds, so I'm just going to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that year I just had a lot of tunnel vision. And again, I just continued to manage the symptoms. The symptoms were primarily the leg pain.
Yeah.
The back pain was moderate, but it was like, I don't know, it didn't bother me as much as the leg pain.
Right.
Um, the leg pain was literally like walking through a grocery store. I would feel the tingles in my feet, and my foot would go numb.
Mm.
And just the extreme tightness in the glute, like
Mm-hmm.
unbearable.
Yeah.
So, but again, I had tunnel vision. I didn't care. I wanted to go to Worlds, and I did go to Worlds, and I did really well. And then after you go to Worlds and you just miss the platform by half a kilo, you're like,
You're like, I gotta
oh,
go back.
I gotta go back.
Yeah.
So then I continued to just like, can I say train my ass off?
Yeah, yeah.
I continued to train my ass off when I got back from Worlds, even though I had those symptoms. I just kind of ignored them. And then I had nationals in October 2017, which would be my last meet before the back surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And I hit like a 2.5 kilo PR total, but it was a bad time for me in terms of
Yeah.
the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was just after that meet, I sort of let myself feel everything,
Mm-hmm.
and it was bad. It
Yeah.
was the tunnel vision went away right
Mm-hmm.
after I was done with that meet,
Yeah.
and suddenly I just kind of let myself feel all the pain and was like, "Whoa, this is affecting my day-to-day life." Like, allowed myself to process it.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I probably compartmentalized it
Mm-hmm.
because I just was so focused on what I wanted to accomplish
Yep.
athletically.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've been there.
yeah.
Totally been there. Alyssa's
Yep.
like, I've been there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember getting done a meet and being like, oh, thank God this is over. I've got to, deal with this.
Yeah,
Yep.
a lot of times I think that's for highly competitive people and even people who are not at that level but trying to get to that level. There's an element of totally ignoring everything, whether it's pain or people or work or whatever, to literally what you said is that tunnel vision on training and competing. And like, I've been there, not necessarily for injuries, but for weight classes,
Mm.
and, having those moments where like, you're like, I can't live like this anymore. I can't, and I think that that's hard for a lot of people to recognize. So I mean, I want to learn a little bit more about your expectations on surgery, but let's dive into that a little bit because I think that it's an important thing for us to talk about because I don't think that people talk about it a lot. Um, in terms of your tunnel vision kind of experience, what do you think was the what was it about that meet that was like, okay, my tunnel vision's over? Like, in terms of the tunnel vision,
Okay.
what helped you get out of it? Like, what
Mm.
what was it that like really pushed you over the edge to say like, I have to deal with this? What was it about that meet? And then knowing what you know now about the downsides of tunnel vision as a person and a competitive lifter, what would you have done differently, or what would you tell someone um, about your experience that you would have changed?
Okay. So again, my goal was to get back on that world team so that I could try to podium the
Mm-hmm.
following year after missing it by half a kilo. I was so fixated on that.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that at nationals, to secure your spot, you have to win your weight class. And Kim Walford was in my weight class, and I thought I had a chance, but I probably didn't
I
have a
was I
chance.
was just behind you trying to always beat you. I was like,
Yeah,
I gotta beat her
everyone's
next
always
time.
just trying to climb. They've got their person they're trying to
Yep, yep.
level themselves up against, and Kim Walford is obviously the goat.
Right,
So,
right.
but um, yeah. So I guess I got second, and I would say I underperformed at the meet as well relative to how I thought I was going to perform,
Mhm.
and also the training cycle was rough. I had to modify a lot because of the pain, and that probably contributed to me not performing as well as I thought
Mhm.
that I would, or I was
Mhm.
projecting to. So the combination of not performing as well, taking second, so the world team kind of dream for the next year
Mhm.
would have to be postponed to another year to try again at nationals, which is how it goes that
Yep.
cycle. Um, and yeah, and then just reflecting on that experience, um, it just I feel like it sort of naturally happened where I didn't have that sort of uh I had the tunnel vision. I didn't have the light at the end of the tunnel anymore for that
Right.
particular year. I would have to
Okay.
at
Yeah.
least wait another year for nationals the following
Mhm.
year. And so that was just I had space.
Yeah, I think that there's like an element of urgency, you
Mhm.
know? And I
Yeah.
think that when things are going well, we're just chasing that light at the end of the tunnel. We're just chasing that next thing.
Right.
And we don't have that um it's like invincibility. You know how like kids always kind of think that they're invincible and that they can do anything and like whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like when I even feel this now, and we're both like 10, 12 years into this at this point. And tell me if this is something that you've experienced, but like there's like we have time, like we don't have to rush things anymore, and obviously like when we're younger we better recovery and we have less responsibilities and really like
Yep.
we can tunnel vision, but
Mhm.
then there as we get older it gets harder, and there's more responsibilities and we recover like less quickly and we start to experience more injuries, and I think that you know we tend to when we're healthy, when we're young, and there isn't anything in our way, we can see that light.
Right.
But there's always another opportunity, and whether that opportunity is in 2 years or in 3 years, it's more about like the long game and sustainability versus let me just do anything that I can to get there right now,
Right.
So I think that I've definitely learned that over the last decade.
Yeah.
And I
And
think that
Yeah, I'm totally with you there.
and we'll talk about after we talk about the surgery and the recovery. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about your mindset shift and change after the surgery and how your training has even changed. Do you feel like we'll talk about this, but and just something to think about. But like, do you feel like your training is a little bit more responsible now? And
Yes. I like that word, responsible.
and that you have opened the doors to more things in your life versus being like you said, stuck in this tunnel. And it's like
Yes.
powerlifting and winning versus now just watching you grow and knowing what I know about you, I know that you are exploring more things in your life and doing more things. Like you dance and you travel a lot, and your social network has opened up. And I think that at a high level of competitiveness, we kind of close down on all of those things, and we ignore injuries, and we ignore friends and family, and like all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Actually, I have a distinct um, event that I missed out on that year in 2017 between Worlds and Nationals.
mhm,
So I went to my friend's wedding, my college friend, my roommate freshman year, and we, for her bachelorette gathering, we sort of got there a few days early and did a few things in the area. Had
mhm.
before she got married that weekend, and there was one thing that I was just like, nah, I'm not doing that. I got to go to the gym. And it was a wine tasting, like
Yeah,
going to a vineyard and doing a wine tasting.
yeah.
And
And now
like
you're
in,
like, no, I'll like do the gym another time and go to the wine tasting.
yeah, I go to the gym all the time. Like I never go
Yeah,
to wine tastings and
exactly.
vineyards. So
Yeah,
and at the time it was just so normal for me to be like, nah, I got to go to the gym. Sorry.
yeah, yeah,
I'll see you guys later.
yeah.
Um,
No, I
but
totally get it.
now I mean, I see those friends maybe once every few years, maybe. And so like that little thing there at the time just felt so normal because I had that tunnel vision.
Hmm.
But then in reflecting on that year and just, things that I ignored because I was in the tunnel, as you said,
Hmm.
like that's one of them, and I regret that as well. So I was obviously there for the whole wedding weekend and
Right.
bachelorette weekend, so it was in
You did other
totality probably
things,
fine.
but yeah,
But you also think that people just don't understand you,
right.
right? Like when you're
Yeah,
in that tunnel, when you're
yeah.
hyper competitive, you
Hmm.
just think that people,
They don't
you know,
get it.
they don't get it, which
Yeah,
on some level is true. Like people
right.
don't get the need to go to the gym 4 days a week, like no matter what.
Yeah.
um, so on some level it is true, but at the same time you do internalize you can internalize that a little bit too much to the point where you start to just have a very unbalanced life.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I've been there, and Alyssa's nodding. It's definitely, and I think that, you know, it's, I just love that our journeys have kind of been the same, like literally the same time span, because we've kind of gone through these things almost parallel in different ways. Like obviously, like I had a kid,
Hmm.
and you had the back surgery, and taking a step back from lifting and looking at how that can actually how it improve. I would say improves our lives. Like you're like, from what I understand about your life, you're leading a more fulfilled life and still able to be a competitive lifter at this point. So, why don't you
Yes.
tell us about the surgery that you had, and what your expectations were going into the surgery? So, like, how did the doctor prepare you for that, and what did they tell you in terms of the recovery? And then, what was the recovery actually like?
Yep. So again, after October 2017, that was nationals. Let all the pain process and had I then had space to actually reflect and think. Was came out of the tunnel, and
Hmm.
I realized my symptoms were really bad, and I would say that even doing that meet made the symptoms potentially
Mhm.
even worse.
Mhm.
Um, and so I followed up with the orthopedist, the spine orthopedist, and did an MRI. I didn't think I would need surgery at the time, but I knew that there was a major issue, and basically did the MRI. The spondy had progressed, and um, so he recommended surgery. And I think I had also spoken to you at the time.
Yeah, I can't
Uh,
remember to what extent we had spoken, but I do
yeah,
remember that we had discussed it. So,
yeah. And then I took his sort of diagnosis, and to you were a PT I asked, and I asked some other PT that was local. And when you hear from a PT that, like, yeah, that you need a surgery for that, then you take it seriously. So, but again, I kind of knew that I needed to find doctors and clinicians who cared about my outcome.
Mhm.
I didn't think that my outcome would be to get back into competitive powerlifting. I actually came to a point where I accepted that, okay, this might be the end.
Mhm.
And I even reflected on the fact that, I mentioned that I underperformed relative to what I was expecting at nationals. So I even reflected on the fact that I was just so angry at myself at the time, even though I got a 2.5 kilo PR total. Like, I should have savored that. But
Right.
instead I was angry at that meet. And then I remember reflecting on that. It was like, whoa, I might not be able to do that ever again. Um, so, but I still wanted to prioritize. I wanted to seek out clinicians who cared about my outcome,
Mhm.
and who didn't tell me that I wouldn't be able to lift again.
Mhm.
I specifically sought out clinicians who had experience with athletes, and gave me reassurance that there was a good chance that I'd be able to continue to get back to lifting and
Mhm.
feeling athletic and feeling good again. So that was part of my incentive of seeking out the spine orthopedist that I did. And I also reached out to Dr. Stuart McGill
Mhm.
because, um, again, just wanted to sort of reach out to a few different PTs and clinicians who may have had different opinions to, get their recommendations and ideas. And um, yeah, and frankly, it was just fairly, there was definitely a consensus that, hey, you should get the surgery.
Mhm.
Um, so I didn't take that lightly from you or from Dr. Stuart McGill. Um, and yeah, so then I was like, well, I got to do it. So in January, that was 4 months later, I went under the knife. And yeah, and I'm glad I did because,
So what surgery did they do?
oh, right. So I got a 360-degree spinal fusion at L5S1.
Okay, so just one level.
Just one level. I have a scar on my belly, and I have two scars on my back because they rotated me during the surgery. And basically, from the front, they inserted a titanium cage
Mhm.
where the disc would be
Mhm.
between the L5 and S1
Mhm.
vertebrae.
Mhm.
And they also inserted a screw into S1 over there to sort of hold the disc in.
Mhm.
And then rotated me on my belly, sliced sliced twice into my spine, into my back,
Mhm.
and and then inserted four rods and screws. I think two rods, four
I
screws.
know you have pictures of this, so maybe we can
Yeah,
grab pictures from you and put it on the YouTube video so that
I'll
people,
send you those
if you're
pictures.
comfortable, obviously,
Yeah,
like we don't have to do that. Okay, cool. Because I
I
think,
post them on social media. It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. So we'll put those on the YouTube video for people to check out because it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, what were you expecting the recovery to be like? And what was it like?
Mm. Uh, so I was in the hospital, I think, for at least a whole day. I definitely was there overnight. Um, I guess what I thought it would be, I thought I wouldn't be able to walk, but I was actually able to walk. I didn't need I didn't need any kind of, like, cane or crutches.
Mm-hmm.
I was just able to walk, which was nice, really slowly. Um, I will say that I felt very physically unstable.
Mhm.
Like I felt like my scars would just tear open at any time
Mhm.
with the incorrect movement. Um, I definitely I hear things that I hadn't heard before, like almost different kinds of like crunching sounds within my back. I don't know. It's a weird thing to describe, but I definitely hear things differently back
Mhm.
there. Um, as far as what I expected, I would say I didn't have expectations. It was just a huge unknown what it would be
Mhm.
like, and I totally accepted that it was an unknown. Um,
Did the
and
doctors prepare you for what that you would like need physical therapy and you would have these precautions for this period of time or anything like that before you had the surgery?
They did, and I would say that my most useful time with a clinician was with Dr. Stuart McGill. I think that he really sort of, even before my back surgery, he sort of identified all of these ways that I was putting my back into extension,
Mhm.
which again was the kind of the trigger for the pain.
Mhm.
Um, he sort of helped me identify all of these just basic day-to-day movement patterns
Mhm.
that where I was getting into extension where I really didn't need to.
Mhm.
So even before the back surgery, I started to repattern my movements. I
Mhm.
started to brace more. Like even in the
Mhm.
car, I sit down and I brace. um, and just getting up from the chair from the couch, like there are different ways that you can
Mhm.
move that you don't even realize on a day-to-day basis that might be causing pain. And he even identified just when I walk, the way that I'm walking is
Mhm.
I'm walking in, you know, with an extended spine more than I
Mhm.
need to. So prior to the back surgery, I started to already repattern my movements,
Mhm.
but he kind of set the expectation for me that I would need to continue to,
Continue. Yeah.
yeah,
So
and
you had been
focus on
practicing,
I had been
basically.
practicing, yeah, so that was good. I'm glad that
They
I
like that, the prehab.
the
Yeah.
prehab, yeah.
Yeah.
So I continued to repattern my movements, and now they're just intuitive.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
these years later,
And well, I think that's important. It's not just like you do things once or you do things when you're in physical therapy. These are things that you constantly, when we do need to change something in our posture or movement patterns, which, I think that there are a lot of people out there who say like posture doesn't matter and, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's always about posture, technique, and load management.
right?
And so if we can kind of address it from all angles versus just one, then we have a better chance of success. And movement repatterning or relearning to move after surgery takes a lot of mental effort.
Yes,
And it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens over an extended period of time of constantly thinking about it and reminding yourself about it and all that kind of stuff. So, um, so physically in the initial weeks after physically and mentally in the initial weeks after the surgery, where were you? Like like were you off work? Were you able to train at all? Like what was that process like for you?
yep. So I actually noticed immediate relief from the back surgery.
Mhm.
I mentioned previously that I I had pain in day-to-day tasks. As I said, walking through a grocery store, would like
Mhm.
have to sit down if because my foot would start to feel numb or
Mhm.
tingly. Um, so I actually felt immediate relief where suddenly I didn't feel any of that.
Mhm.
And I don't know if others who have spinal fusions have that kind of outcome,
They
but I was
do
definitely
if
very fortunate
they
too.
do, and this is a key point that I want people to remember because we can have these issues in our back and we can have the symptoms that you were experiencing down your leg, and those symptoms in your leg or symptoms elsewhere might not be coming from your back. But people tend to have immediate relief of their symptoms after surgery if the symptoms are coming from their back. So for you, you could have like acupunctured the shit out of your ass. You could have rolled the crap out of it, literally and figuratively.
That's what I did.
I know, and get no relief because the symptom was not originating in that area.
Right.
So yes, it's common when it is the appropriate surgery to have that people wake up and they're like, wow, I don't have symptoms in my leg anymore. Now, when we
Yep.
have surgery elsewhere, like if we have a rotator cuff tear and they repair the rotator cuff, then that usually feels
Yeah.
much worse after the surgery for a period of time because it's a direct repair of that area. But and the pain is in the same area. But when you have radicular pain that's coming from your spine, the symptoms are almost immediately resolved. Now, if there's a ton of inflammation in the back, sometimes you can still have the symptoms because the inflammation can be compressing the nerve roots. But generally speaking, like you had real bad compression. So when they put the spacer in your spine, you
Hmm.
got significant relief.
Oh yeah, and I felt it immediately. Like
Yeah.
getting up, walking. Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I actually remember feeling a huge sense of like euphoria. Like I felt euphoria
Yeah.
after that. I was like, wow, I can just walk and not feel this pain that I've been feeling for
And
months on end.
oftentimes we don't even realize how much pain we were in until we don't have the pain,
Exactly. I
Yeah.
started to process, whoa, I was in a lot more pain than I even realized that I was.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So,
um, in terms of your mental and emotional connection to lifting, what were some of the thoughts that went through your head after the surgery in the initial couple of weeks?
so again, I prioritized seeing clinicians who didn't who cared about my outcome and cared about me as an athlete and wanting to have an athletic life. And again, I totally just never thought that powerlifting competitively was in the cards for me ever again. So it was tough accepting that. Definitely a very intense emotional experience because, as you said, I went from competitive gymnastics pretty much straight to competitive
Mhm.
powerlifting.
Mhm.
That was like my life was just being an athlete,
Competitive, yeah.
being competitive. So I had to reckon with that, and I did reckon with it. It was challenging, but I did. Um, However, again, I sought out clinicians who cared about my outcome and me as an athlete, and I was reassured that I'd be able to lift weights. And not everything involves spinal compression that you do in the gym. You could do leg extensions. There's no spinal
Mhm.
compression there. You could do
Mhm.
hamstring
Mhm.
curls. You could do bicep curls. You could
Mhm.
do pull-ups. Like there's a
So you
lot
were
that you
going to
could
be a
do.
bodybuilder.
Well,
I think you
I
did go
did
through,
enter a
yeah.
bodybuilding phase, I'd
Yeah.
say. I hired 2 different bodybuilding coaches over the next couple of years, and, through that process, just learned how to train a little bit differently, and I think getting away from the powerlifting meet calendar, from the
Mhm.
powerlifting meet cycle was also really good for me, from a
Mhm.
mental health standpoint as
Mhm.
well, where we didn't get into this much, but I was definitely in a cycle of cutting a lot for
Yep.
meets and then
Yep.
my weight rebounding. So I think we're talking about my back surgery here, but there was also a certain mental and emotional thing where divorcing myself from that meet cycle
Mhm.
was good for me to um, build some day to day just peace and ease.
Yeah, we were talking about this. We did an episode with Danny Lennon on talking about cutting,
Hmm.
and like one of the problems with our sport and at that high level is that we have, I think you probably did some of this, not just the Arnold and Nationals, but when we have the like international circle, right? We have
Hmm.
Nationals, Arnold, Pan Am, Bench Nationals, Bench Worlds,
Just
IPF
everything.
Worlds, like everything. And it's like there are people in that cycle who do like 4 to 5, 6 meets a year, and
Yeah.
it's so emotionally and physically exhausting from you just cycling for competition and cycling your nutrition and having to look at the scale every single day to be like, where's my training weight, where am I going to be when I compete,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
Before they
And
moved nationals, there was a year that within, I believe it was 4 or 5 weeks,
nationals
I was at
and worlds.
Worlds, I was at NAPFs, and then I was at Nationals.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. So getting away from that meet calendar, I think was really good for me to just build some sort of, I wasn't in the cycles of cycling my nutrition and cycling my training.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to figure out a way to live where I was just like steady training, steady nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think in the long run, that was really good for me
Mm-hmm.
because I am a lot more just stable and even from a nutritional standpoint. I
Mm-hmm.
am more just, I would even say stable and even from a training standpoint as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, had no intent to get back to the powerlifting platform, but I
So
still hit the gym. I
that
still like
kind
the
of
gym.
leads into the next question I have for you is when did it when did you kind of feel like your injury is like not an injury anymore, that like you are recovered?
Mm.
And when did that coincide with this kind of like light inside of you again to get back on the platform?
So it took a while, frankly.
Yeah.
I remember about a year and a couple months after my surgery. I think it was April 2019. I had
Mm-hmm.
my surgery January 2018. I remember just going into my gym and seeing a meet. It was, I don't know, I think I was supporting a friend, and I couldn't watch it. I felt phantom pain from
Oh,
watching people
interesting.
deadlift and like, pull heavy deadlifts and miss their lifts, and it was it was a really just, I couldn't handle it. Um I felt things in my back
Mm-hmm.
just like from watching other
Mm-hmm.
people deadlift heavy, and they were obviously fine, but
Mm-hmm.
I was not fine.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like 15 months after my surgery. Like, so I recognized at that point that there was a certain just like mental component um that, like, as I said, just watching a meet, I couldn't watch a meet. I unfollowed a lot of lifters on social media. I couldn't see it on my phone. It was triggering.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it was emotionally triggering, but
Mm-hmm.
again, I felt like I just couldn't physically watch. It was too
Mm-hmm.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Um so but I still liked going to the gym, and I kind of got into just learning how to train bodybuilding style, which also has squat, benches, and deadlifts. So I did over time, like I started with just the bar on everything, and
So it was
particularly
like
on squat and
it
deadlift.
was over a year before you touched a barbell.
No, actually,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. So when did you touch a barbell
I
for the first time?
so I pretty much benched right away.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I benched with a flat back.
Right. Okay.
Um, yeah, I had no problem benching as long as I was not putting my feet on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing feet up bench stuff almost like 2 weeks after my surgery. It was probably too soon. But I just really wanted to get in the gym and feel something because I felt good because
Mm-hmm.
of the euphoria from the lack of the pain. I
Mm-hmm.
felt good.
Mm-hmm.
So I was benching a plate like probably 2 or 3 weeks out from surgery because, as I said, I just felt good. It was probably too soon. Um, but I knew that I needed to be careful with direct spine loading, so I waited longer to load up anything for a squat and a deadlift. So I was doing air squats, I was doing leg extensions, I was doing hamstring curls, but again, there was no spine loading.
Mm-hmm.
I waited probably 4 months to just put the bar on my back and squat that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it took me a while before I loaded up a plate. I don't know precisely when. It took me probably 7 months uh to load up anything for a deadlift. I think I started with 95 pounds, and I was only sumo deadlifting because, again, just the way that your back is sort of angled,
Mm-hmm.
um, sumo kind of felt better. And
Mhm.
also Stu McGill recommended that, there's less shearing forces
Mhm.
when you're, or for me, at least with my positioning on the
Mhm.
sumo. So I started sumo deadlifting, and I was a conventional deadlifter, so that was a change as
Mhm.
well. Um, but I would say, like a year after surgery, I was pretty strong.
Mhm.
I kind of gained a lot of weight because food was a coping mechanism for me, and I had no intent to. I wasn't cutting for a meet.
Right.
Um, so sometimes when you gain weight, you kind of just gain some strength via leverages and. So I think that I was stronger than expected about a year later from the surgery, but I was very focused on, again, just load management, being careful, and not loading up ridiculous amounts of weight, but loading up reasonable amounts of weight and progressing that very slowly over time.
Did you
Um,
have any traditional physical therapy after the surgery?
I did, and I thought that the physical therapists that I worked with were not like thinking about me in terms of me as an athlete.
Yeah.
Um, so they had me do some stuff for my core, uh, some stuff which was probably helpful, but I mostly followed Stu McGill's
Mhm.
protocols for me.
Mhm.
So when I met with him, he helped me repattern all my movements. He also came up with uh, a protocol for me post back
Mhm.
surgery,
Mhm.
which again, as you said, I think you said load management and technique, and I forgot the other one that you said.
I
Um,
forget what I said.
those there were like
Load
three
management
principles.
technique. Oh, posture.
Oh, posture, yeah.
Yeah.
So those three principles just kind of guided my training, and frankly, I I would say that I was a student of my spine and my
Mhm.
training and recovery. And I think that you really have to
You
be. You
do.
can't
Yeah.
completely rely on someone else because they don't
Mhm.
know how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
Um, so I, a lot of it was just me soaking up as much knowledge as I could. A lot of it was also, again, just s- that that meeting with Stu McGill. I think it was multiple hours long. I got some really good information from him. But really, it was just about minimize loading your spine for as long as you can, and once you feel comfortable, you can start and make sure that you progress it really slowly.
So, speaking of progressing really slowly, we tend to lose motivation to train. And, you had already reconciled the fact that like you weren't competing again or you didn't plan to compete again and you just wanted to kind of do this to be athletic. So, what are some things that motivated you to continue to train despite it being completely different than before surgery?
Being honest, it was tough. I was a lot more inconsistent
Yeah.
for years.
Mhm.
I think my average going to the gym was probably 2 days a week.
Mhm.
Um, so I,
How did that make you feel? Cuz I think that some people like that in and of itself can make people feel like crap.
mm,
Like I used to be able to go to the gym so much and there was nothing that I needed to like I didn't need someone to light a fire under my ass. So how did that like make you feel? What was going through your head? Did you have like low self-esteem when it like in response to that, not what led to that, but like you know because I think that some people like we work with people who are like I just can't get it together, I just can't, like I just can't motivate myself to go when I feel like this.
yeah.
So how did that make you feel like when you're like, well, I used to be this, I used to train this much and now I'm like just going twice a week, and not even training for anything.
Frankly, I struggled for a long time. It was just boring. It
Yeah.
was boring to load up such light weight and not be able to just feel like a badass in the gym.
Hmm.
It
So
was boring.
how do you think that like what kept you even just doing those 2 days and keep like kept you just doing just enough to get to a point where you are now?
Um, because I knew it was healthy
Mhm.
for my recovery.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't have any powerlifting sort of. I put competitive powerlifting aside completely. Didn't
Mhm.
see that as something I'd return to. Had to in order to get through that phase,
Mhm.
or that period. But I knew that I needed to do that to even just 2 days a week. Like I knew it would help me recover
Mhm.
and feel better. So that's why I kept showing up. And I also just I like getting a pump.
Yeah.
I like going to the gym.
Yeah.
It's a I guess as someone who works from home, it's like it's the
It's
time I
your
get to
outing.
go
Yeah.
out and
Yeah.
chill. It's my outing for the day.
So
So
when did you where was that shift from the like not eating well and gaining weight and training twice per week and kind of just doing enough to stay healthy and get through the recovery? When did that shift into I'm feeling good, I'm training 4 days a week, I'm losing weight again? Like where was that shift and how where was that shift?
I think that shift was that powerlifting meet that I
Yeah.
saw, and I saw that, and again that was like 15 months later, and then I processed why I really need to let go.
Yeah.
I need to let go of powerlifting and just find something else to really
Mhm.
enjoy, and start to so that I can feel good again.
Mhm.
And I hired a bodybuilding coach then. A few
Mhm.
weeks later, that was around my birthday, April 2019,
Mhm.
and then I kind of got back into training consistently because I had a coach. I
Mhm.
knew the value of having a coach, and so to hold me accountable, to showing up to the gym because I wanted to show up to the gym.
Yeah,
Um,
I think this just goes to show like even the elite athletes, like they're not always motivated. And, you know, even like you aren't always accountable to yourself. Like that is not a lazy thing.
right.
People sometimes need a partner in crime to kind of help them get through this or get
Yeah.
through those periods of low motivation. So sometimes people are like, "Oh, I'm not motivated enough to work with a coach." But maybe working with a coach will help you get motivated again,
Yeah. It's funny
So,
how that works. It's like you hire a coach because you know this is a habit you want to develop, and you're struggling to develop it yourself.
mhm.
So you hire someone to hold you accountable because this is a habit you know that you want to develop and something that you value.
Yeah.
And I wanted to redevelop the habit again of going to the gym.
Mhm.
I consistently, and I wanted to be jacked. And I wanted to get on top of my nutrition because I was in a cycle of gaining and losing weight for
Mhm.
powerlifting meets,
Mhm.
and I didn't have a powerlifting meet to sort of diet down for. And without that motivation, I was like, well, I'm just
I
gonna
can
let
just eat
myself.
whatever.
I'm just gonna eat whatever I want.
I know
um,
there's some people who get like lose weight when they do that, and then there's other people like me and you who
yeah, that's always been my tendency. But
Yeah.
yeah, without a gymnastics meet, without a powerlifting meet, I was also in that territory of like not having to have just there wasn't like a need for me to just manage my nutrition.
Mhm.
Um, but again, I think going to that powerlifting meet and just feeling all the phantom pain and realizing that it was still a trigger for me, and I think I've posted about this on social media before. I definitely have, but I caught myself saying out loud to a friend at the gym who had sort of started a bodybuilding phase. I caught myself saying out loud to her, "Oh, I could never do the nutrition for bodybuilding. I don't have the discipline for that." I said that
Mhm.
out loud,
Mhm.
and which might have been a normal thing for me to say out loud, but for whatever reason, I caught myself saying that and was like, "Wait, I," because I had also coached a bunch of uh, lifters too, and a lot of coaching is helping people identify
Barriers.
what their
Yeah.
limiting beliefs are, and so it's like you do that for other people, but sometimes you can't identify your own
Mhm.
self-limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
But just that one day in that gym, I caught myself saying that out loud. I was like, wait, I believe that I don't have discipline. Of course, I could have discipline if I choose to have discipline.
Mhm.
So that was a turning point for me as well. And those two things happened around the same time where I sort of saw that powerlifting meet. and was like, okay, powerlifting is not something I can think of. So, but you like the gym, so maybe think about bodybuilding. And then I also caught myself saying that thing out loud about me not being able to follow a bodybuilding diet and have discipline. So those
But
two things led to me hiring a bodybuilding coach.
and here we are in 2023, and you have gone back to the World Powerlifting platform.
Yes.
So, talk to us a little bit about the second shift that you had from bodybuilding to powerlifting.
Sure. So I only had a bodybuilding coach for like 6 months. And that
Mm-hmm.
was really all that I needed to just kind of rebuild the habit and also just get on a path where my nutrition situation was more stable as well. And so I was kind of like I was getting leaner and I was getting stronger because I was just training more consistently. And again, just keeping everything in mind from my back surgery and being careful. And there were times I pushed it too hard and had to
Mm-hmm.
really pull back.
What
Um,
si- what in what ways? Like, how did you know you pushed it too hard?
Pain.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
what was it? The same type of pain you had before the surgery, or was it different?
it was actually different. I actually
Mm-hmm.
had direct back pain.
Direct back pain. Yeah.
Yeah, less. Actually, sometimes I would get a little bit of the radiating, the radiation down my leg. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I did start to feel some symptoms when I pushed it a little bit too hard, and
Mm-hmm.
that was about a year and a half after my back surgery. So I
Mm-hmm.
was still getting pains, but not. But again, that's because I pushed it too hard at the gym. I recognized that I was just really excited
Mm-hmm.
to be training again consistently. So there were periods of me kind of going too hard, then having to back off. Um, and as far as when the shift happened, frankly, I was just one day I was like about 3.5 years later. So again, fairly consistently going to the gym. I also got really into doing cardio,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
learned that from the bodybuilding phase. And over the years, I tried various different forms of cardio. I started dancing. I did cycling, and yeah. Then one day, I was just like, I kind of am curious. Like again, over time, just showing up to the gym fairly consistently, you will get stronger if you manage your load well, manage your weights well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting pretty strong, and things weren't causing me pain. And I was able to sort of look at people lifting again too. So it's hard to identify when there was a moment, but um, one day I think Andre wanted to sign up for a powerlifting meet, and uh, and then I was like, I think I'll sign up too. 6 weeks
Mm-hmm.
from now, sure,
Sure. Why not?
why not? See how it goes, because at that point I was confident that I could just train,
Yeah.
but I wasn't confident that I could train for a meet
Mm-hmm.
because that's a whole different sort of training and cycle. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know if I could handle a peaking cycle for a meet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was curious because I had been doing fairly well up until that point. I was able to squat like 315 for 5 to 8 reps again, but I wasn't going heavier than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
She wasn't going heavier than
yeah,
that.
yeah. I was doing fairly decent rep
Yeah.
outs,
Yeah.
but again was scared of the prospect of loading up more weight, but
Mm-hmm.
also was curious because I was like, oh, I'm getting decently strong. Maybe I can do like a mild to moderate like peak
Peak.
for a meet,
Yeah.
and I did. And again, it was just 6 weeks later, and I sort of just went with what I would say I trained intuitively. I don't know if that means anything really,
Uh-huh.
but I just kind of again, if you've done so many meets, you sort of know the pattern
Mm-hmm.
for peaking for a meet. And not only did I sort of know the general pattern, but I knew that I had to be careful
Mm-hmm.
with my spine.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and that was in October 2021. I did a USPA meet.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just I signed up for a meet 6 weeks later. I was like, oh, let's see how this goes, and it went
Didn't you
pretty
get
well.
you got invited to something after that? No?
I may have.
I don't know. You got invited to something with USPA, but then did you not do it? I can't
I
remember.
I was gonna do another meet, um, like locally,
Yeah.
and then I decided not to because I decided to hire a coach, and she was like, "Hey, PA Nationals is gonna be in Austin."
Right.
So yeah, going back, the meet went pretty well. And I was like, huh, I feel okay.
Yeah. So I think, it's interesting because one of the things, what year was that again?
This was the end of 2021,
And the
October
surgery was in
2021,
2017.
January 2018.
January 2018. So, for those of you listening, I just want to, and this, Chelsea was not at her peak strength. This was not the strength level that she was at before she had her surgery. But what I want you guys to realize and recognize is one of the things that we say to people is that it often takes 1 to 1.5 times as long as you've been experiencing your symptoms to get back to or surpass your prior level of athleticism. And your story, Chelsea, is, I hope, inspiring to a lot of people to take it slow and allow not just your body, but your mind to recover, especially when you've been dealing with something for so long that you've either been avoiding or hasn't been at a level of needing to intervene so drastically. And it's kind of just been underlying for so long that, it's been there for that long. And it's literally takes, and I don't have any research to support this. I've just been doing this as a physical therapist and powerlifting coach since 2014. I mean, I've been a physical therapist since 2012, but I've been a powerlifting coach and combining that with physical therapy since 2014. And it's in my experience that if done the right way to regain your prior level of strength and mental and emotional connection to your sport, it takes 1 to 1.5 times as long as you've been experiencing your symptoms. So, it's why I wanted to share your story, because there are people who it happens fast, but I think for the majority of people, for the average Joe, and you are not average, obviously, Chelsea,
Oh.
but no, you're not. You're a high performer. You have you have genetics that put you at the top performance level in this sport. And even for someone like you, it you've, since that first meet, you've then gone on to get back into your serious level of competitiveness. You've gone to nationals, you've gone to worlds. You did the Arnold? I can't remember.
No, Arnold.
No, Arnold.
Nationals and Worlds.
National and worlds, and you're hitting PRs,
Yeah.
so this is, even someone at that level, there are the mental and emotional, like, not everyone can maintain that level of mental and emotional stability around training and competitiveness. And it's okay to take that step back and allow yourself time to heal, allow yourself time to step away from competitiveness, to step away from this sport, to just enjoy other things. So that's really why I wanted to share your story, because throughout this whole process, like, you've really taken time to not let powerlifting consume your life. When we find, it doesn't matter what level of competitiveness you are. Like, if you want to compete in powerlifting, like, most people who want to compete seriously, even if it's at a local level or a national level or an international level, let powerlifting consume them. And it becomes their identity. And, we didn't really have time to talk about the whole identity shifts and the reconciliation of all of that. But, it's challenging, but you allowed yourself to go through it. And, we see people who, like, have an injury and then they're, like, back on the platform hitting PRs in a year or like 6 months. And that doesn't happen for everyone. And that doesn't happen for every type of injury and the gravity of injuries and surgeries. Like I said, it's 1 to 1.5 times as long as the injury has been there. And Chelsea, you're a really good example of that. Like, this was something that you had underlying for, the majority of your adult athletic career, began to be consistently symptomatic at some point, and it went on for a period of time until it became debilitating. And if you look at it, it's really been 1 to 1.5 times as long as you were experiencing the consistency in your symptoms that led to surgery.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So, um, for strength athletes out there who are dealing with the emotional stress and identity shifts that come with major surgery, what advice do you have for them to help keep the big picture in mind, remain hopeful, and not give up?
Oof. Well, I think that as you get older over time, you do realize that in many different ways your identity and sense of self and values can shift over time.
Mhm,
And every time it happens, you're okay with your new kind of sense of being and sense of identity.
mhm,
And I think that if you're going through some kind of major surgical procedure, you have a major injury, it may lead to it may be a trigger for that sort of process of having
mhm.
to give yourself space, think about yourself and your life and your identity, and reframe it according to what you need to do to feel good and content on a day-to-day basis with your current situation.
Yeah.
So I think having a sense of being able to um, ride waves and ride the waves of life and sh- uh, you know flow through different seasons of life, having
Mhm.
that sense of being able to endure that and go through those processes, having that sense can really carry you through not just a major injury but through anything.
Yeah. I value what you're saying, cuz sometimes like you're in that tunnel without a light at the end of it, you know? And you just kind of have to either sink or swim.
Yep.
And you can succumb to the loss of identity for that period of time, or you can ride the waves and shift that identity and just kind of be in what you are in. And I think that's the most important thing. And if you have people around you to support you, whether it's a physical therapist, a chiropractor, a partner, a coach, or whatnot, like if this is something that you love, manipulate it so that you can do it while you're recovering, in whatever mode or a, amount or intensity or frequency that needs to be, like for you it was 2 days a week and not worrying about your diet, and you got through that, and you were in that, you were letting it happen, and then you were like, all right, let's do a little, but sometimes you just have to be there,
Yeah.
and just letting yourself be versus trying to force yourself into the like old you is important. I think
Yeah.
when we try to hold on to some, like, we age, our hair changes, our skin changes, and like we can't change the fact that we're getting older, so we can go with it, or there's people like, we can't Peter Pan ourselves into like staying a power lifter or a young power lifter or an uninjured power lifter forever. The more we do this, the more we have to kind of like ride those waves.
I think acceptance
Yeah.
is a key theme. Accept your circumstances. It
Hmm.
can be really hard to let go of, a former identity or a former like just way of life of you living your life, but if you the sooner you can get to accepting your circumstances, then you can make the most of them.
Yeah. Very well said, Chelsea. Thank you so, so much for sharing your story. This has been really, I know that this is going to help tons of people um, get through the slumps in their training, get through the injuries and the changes in their family obligations and their work situations, financial situations, and all those things that influence training. Your story can apply to all of that, and I hope that people can learn from and take from your experiences and apply it to themselves. So thank you so much for joining us, Chelsea.
Well,
For
thank you for
those,
having me.
you're welcome. Seriously, thank you so much. And for those people who are interested in connecting with you, where can they find you?
uh, you can find me on social media, the little at sign Savvy Savit. I'm sure you could post that on
Yeah,
the
we're gonna put that in,
podcast.
yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for everybody. So go ahead and give Chelsea a follow. Her story is incredible. Her lifting is awesome, and she's a lot of fun to watch.
And
So
I got to meet in less than 3 weeks, nationals
yeah,
again.
so
So
yeah. Well,
That'll be exciting.
this might become, I can't remember when this is coming out in March. So
Oh,
this
okay. Never mind.
it might be after, but
Oh, okay.
I'm
That's
sure
all
you'll be able
good.
to go catch videos
Yeah.
of it. So definitely go check her out on social media, and you can keep tabs on her and her journey and all
Cool.
of her awesome PRs. Thank you,
Thanks for having me.
Chelsea.